Live. Andrew Erickson on Labor Day. We are doing the work on Labor Day for your fantasy team.
Hell yeah. We're doing the work. I could not think of a better way to spend my Labor Day before week 1 than sitting down with the Podfather. Let's rock.
Oh, we should share this. We should share this on social media. I'm going to go ahead and share this, that we're live with Andrew Erickson, because I'm right now, my streaming is not streaming to X. Something's wrong. There's shockingly, I don't know if you know this, but X has bugs and issues. That there's things going wrong with X pretty much every day. And so now what we'll do is it's the Mind of Mansion live with Andrew Erickson. Boom. That is posted on the X. Twitter is such a good brand, man. Like, it's this cute little bird, and it's perfect. Like, it's like little notes that are just a couple sentences, and you fold it up into a piece of paper, and you give it to the little bird in his beak, or you put it in his little claws, his little talons, or you tie it around his leg, and then he goes to someone down the road and flies, and then in their window, like Harry Potter with an owl, and then he drops off the little note to you. Right? It's just so perfect, right? And it just rolls off the tongue, Twitter. Like, it's perfect. It was a great brand. The brand was worth tens of millions of dollars. Just that logo, the name and the logo together, right? If you had that brand at auction, the logo and the name, it would be so expensive. It would be worth it'd be so much of a bidding war. As for a guy to come in and go, no, we're just going to take a letter of the alphabet and we're going to call it that instead. Really, catastrophic blunder. Really, really dumb. I mean, I could be wrong. I mean, certainly a lot of people over the years have said, hey, Elon Musk is doing a bad thing here. He's doing something wrong. He is making a mistake. He's fucking up. Right? And then turns out in hindsight, oh no, he actually could pull off a rocket company. Right? It actually is possible. Right? So I'm sure that it's very possible that we're going to be looking back in 10 years. And man, when he changed the name from Twitter to X, everything took off. And everything kind of clicked into place. And that was a cold take by the Podfather. But as of right now, I mean, what? It's so frustrating that it's called X now.
Yeah, I don't love it. I mean, it made a lot of sense when, you're firing off tweets from the toilet. It was perfect. It just rolls off the tongue, like you said. And now what are you firing off? Like X's? What is the new name of the actual individual posts? Is it just posting? Now it's not retweeting, it's reposting. And they're not tweets anymore. They're what? Posts? X's? Y's? Z's? What letter of the alphabet?
I didn't even think of that. Yeah, it's not only Twitter, but then the action word associated with the brand was tweets, which was also perfect. Jesus Christ, man. I just every day have to interact with this platform because you and I, we grew up. You're younger than I am, clearly. Anyone that's watching this on YouTube, clearly Andrew Erickson is much younger than the Podfather. These are lines on my forehead. He does not have lines on his forehead, everybody.
I don't know. My fiance reminds me about my Wi-Fi a lot of the time.
Yeah, I am basically talking to someone through a filter, is what it looks like. That's how youthful. You have a youthful vibe, my friend, a youthful appearance. You look great. I, though, in fairness, will advocate for myself a little bit in that I do believe that I have a youthful disposition and a vigor and a skin tone, whatever it is, skin health that is youthful as well. So I think that most people, if they try to guess my age, they go lower than I actually am, and that makes me feel good. But I think that's a mindset too. I think part of it is if you're always frustrated and angry, you're going to be furrowing your brow, you're going to be wrinkling your face up, and then your face is going to end up in this wrinkly thing, right? Whereas I'm kind of like open and ready for the world and happy. And for some reason, I think that puts less drag on your face. What do you think of that theory?
100%. Like, you wear how you feel. Like, if you feel like shit and you are doing bad things, you're going to wear it on your face. And you're just going to look depressed and sad. But if you're excited about the day and you have caffeine flowing through your body and you're just like, I'm ready to go, like, you can see the brightness pop up in your face, in your eyes, and in your skin. So I think that take is spot on.
I think, man, yeah, I feel good. I moisturize. I woke up today, ran 2 miles, jumped in my cold pool, and took a cold shower, got real just invigorated. I do go that extra mile, not more than 2 miles. Usually I just do 2 miles. But I tend to go a little bit harder in the morning, getting myself ready on show days. So I got up for this, Andrew. I did. I got up for this in a big way. I spent a lot of time on the show sheet that I'm looking at. We have a lot of questions. I want to bring you in a proper way. So we're gonna do a proper announcement. You are the next generation, right? I feel like you are the next generation. You're from Boston. I'm from New England. So I see, I see some of, I see like it's important to me that we pay it forward, that you get what you give. Isn't that a song? I feel like that was a song from the 90s. You get what you give.
Is that you two?
No, it was like a one-hit wonder. I feel like, let us know in the chat. Anyone know in the chat the song "You Get What You Give"? I feel like there was a song called "You Get What You Give." It had a real catchy. Nate Liss and I actually broke that song down in the Sonic Truth once. I think it's just a fun, upbeat summer song, and it's escaping me. The band is escaping, but this is why we had the chat. We had this chat. They will tell us the Get What You Give band. And you're now with Fantasy Pros, and you're rising up Fantasy Pros because people are leaving Fantasy Pros, and then you're like, oh, New Radicals.
Yeah.
New Radicals. Thank you, Franz. Yes, the New Radicals, one of those just California bands that had the one hit, and then no one knows any of the other songs. But that's one for the summer playlist right there. New Radicals, absolutely. Let's do that. Put that in the summer playlist. So I'm just trying to figure out how we're going to bring you in here in a way but also you had listened to this show before you became a fantasy analyst, right? Like, you knew about this show before you ever wrote an article for anybody, right?
Correct. Yep.
Cool. That's great. Because you had a long commute, right? Driving from Worcester to Boston, which is insane. And then you found the show, and this is where we're at now. Like, that, if I could, if I had a time machine, go back, to 2014, 2015, and be like, what's going to happen? You're going to be interviewing people. This show actually exists in 2023. You're going to be interviewing people that found the show as fantasy gamers in college and in high school. They're eventually going to become analysts, and they're going to come on the show, and it's going to be a big deal to them that it was one of the first shows they ever listened to, and then it's going to be a rite of passage. And I would say, yeah, that sounds about right. The ego of the past decade Podfather. Yeah, I can only imagine what he would have said to that. Right? Very meta exchange there, meta scenario I've just laid out for you.
Yeah, exactly. No, but super excited to be on. Like you said, long-time listener and Patreon subscriber as well, Podfather.
That's right. Patreon.com/Podfather. Patreon.com/Podfather. We are doing a patron draft tonight on Rival. So Rival Fantasy, they are one of our sponsors. They help make a lot of what we do possible, and they just rolled out season-long drafts and season-long fantasy football league formats. So check it out. You can build your own custom leagues with your friends. It's just I'm always looking for new platforms, new ways to play fantasy, new takes on, new spins on fantasy football. And the fact that Rival's always trying new stuff, they try fantasy bingo, these challenges where you can issue challenges to others, based on, a total yardage that you believe a player is going to achieve this week. And so love Rival. Their promo code there is PLAYER. Promo code is PLAYER. And check them out. Use the promo code. Take advantage of this. It's the best possible offer. You can see it right there on the screen. Take advantage. Rivalfantasy.com. Now I'll bring you in, and if you're gonna want this. You're gonna want what I'm about to do here, because it's gonna start slow. I can't believe that for many months I didn't think that I could pull off doing this live with the music, and I just did it cold. Right, I did it cold without the music live, because I was like, you know what? I don't know if it's going to be distracting. I can just lay it in post-production for the podcast. And then the live, we're not going to have it, because I don't know. I don't know if I can time it right. And I was messing up now and then. It was hard to really dial it in. But now, man, I think I really got the hang of it. Welcome to the Mind of Mansion program. The next generation, the face, the baby face of the next generation of fantasy football analysts coming to us live from Fantasy Pros. It is Andrew Erickson.
You're not the first person to come up with the baby face nickname, so that's not an original Podfather take.
We didn't talk about it before, though.
We did talk about it a little bit. We were talking about the skin. But
No, but you didn't say that the baby face moniker has already been used by someone else, that someone else made it up. To me, it felt original. In the moment when I was doing it, it felt original. I got to tell you that.
Yeah, when I was playing football in high school, they used to call me Babyface, because I was just, the other guys way ahead of me, but now it's in the fantasy football range in this world. Now I am also known as Babyface. People always ask me on some of the shows we do with Fantasy Pros, like, Andrew, is Joe your dad? Is D-Bro your uncle? Like, who are these people? Are they taking care of the kids? How old are you? And I'm like, guys, I'm almost 30 years old. This is my last prime year before I hit the running back age cliff and just totally fall off into dust. So
you look like a human TikTok filter. In a good way. Even your teeth, bro. Your teeth. I mean, honestly, if we do any kind of photo shoot modeling for, this show or, our guests, right? We might have to send a photographer to your house. Just letting you know. You'd be a candidate for the cover sheet. Just let you know, the cover photo. I'm telling you, man, you look great. You look great.
Well, I appreciate that.
You're almost as old as Cooper Kupp.
Yeah, I am. We're about that same range.
Yeah, and you look a hell of a lot younger than Cooper Kupp. Cooper Kupp is getting older by the day, as we all are, but he's almost speeding up. It's a little bit weird with Cooper Kupp. I feel bad because we know he takes incredible care of his body, incredible care of his mind. He's clearly one of the sharpest, smartest football players in existence, and yet that's not the player I would have expected to have this string of injuries. But it reminds me a lot of Larry Fitzgerald, because Larry Fitzgerald was also a player that was famously intense about his strength and conditioning, and then he had these years where he was just laid low by hamstring injuries. So I'm starting to get these Larry Fitzgerald vibes where, yes, there were lost seasons in Arizona where they had a quarterback like Kurt Warner goes down. It was down to some true, we should put it in I'll ask the chat. The chat will know if you can name some of those quarterbacks that Larry Fitzgerald played under post Kurt Warner. It was the worst of the worst. It was the stone worst quarterback play you've ever seen. And that's what Cooper Kupp's going to deal with if and when Matthew Stafford misses games. And so I'm starting to get this vibe, but also there's hope because Fitzgerald made it through. Like age 29, age 30, age 31, he bottomed out and then because he took such great care of his body, it was a ramp back up, right? Where age 33, 34, 35, he was back over 1,000 yards. He was back being a top fantasy asset. It was interesting. So I think that Cooper Kupp, in the long run, his play style and his off the field work, I think will set him up to be that guy. But in the meantime, there's going to be some pain. And Drew Stanton was one of his quarterbacks. Drew Stanton was one of those guys.
Yeah, Stanton was the first name that came to mind when I was thinking about the post.
Ryan Lindsley, but I want to say Ryan Lindsley, but that's not it. Ryan Lindsley, I believe, is a center for the Chargers. So it's not Ryan Lindsley, but it's someone that sounds like that. That's another quarterback that Larry Fitzgerald suffered through.
There was a Ryan.
There were some Ryans that weren't good, and the chat is gonna continue to pour in these names for us. Thank you, chat. So, what is your take on Cooper Kupp? Give us the take. This year, Dynasty talked about Cooper Kupp.
Well, I think that he is on the downward trajectory. You know, we look at him the last 2 years, and he scored more points per game than every other player. Like, he's been at the top. So naturally, what happens when you're at the top? You got to come down at some point. And the fact that he's now racking up these hamstring injuries, now he's already having a relapse with the one that he suffered this offseason. Now it's coming up again. And it just kind of seems like, I mean, I was scared after the first hamstring injury. Originally, I was like, all right, I'm back on the Cooper Kupp train. Looks like Stafford's, his health is checking out. The neck looks okay. All right, I'm back in. Like Jefferson, Chase, Kupp, like I'm there. And then the first hamstring injury happens. I'm like, all right, I'm going to pump the brakes on Cooper Kupp. Going to move him down a little bit more, but not opposed to him. Falls to the back end around 1. Okay, like I'm in it. I'm into this. And then it happens again, most recently with the hamstring injury. And then I'm like, all right, well, let's look at the track record of just wide receiver busts. It's like in the early rounds and just looking at players over the age of 30. And typically these guys just don't post high-end fantasy numbers. Like last year, you had 4 guys finish as inside the top 50 above age 30. Lockett, Thielen, Keenan Allen, and DeAndre Hopkins. 2 of those guys didn't even play half the season. So Keenan Allen and DeAndre Hopkins missed half the games that they were playing. So yeah, they finished inside the top 50. They were productive on a per game basis. But if you're looking at Cooper Kupp as a guy you're taking in round 1, he may not even play all the games. So yeah, when he's out there, he'll be productive. But how long is that for? And there are just so many other guys I'd much rather have. Like the future is now, Podfather. Like we want youth.
Thank you.
We want young players on our teams. These guys not only are more productive, but they come back from injuries faster because they're younger. It's why we feel better about Breece Hall coming back from his injury versus some of these other running backs coming off their injuries who are older, or wide receivers that are older. Like that's why Keenan Allen's not being drafted as a second round pick, because he was hurt all of last year with a hamstring injury. We know he's good and productive on the field, but is he going to play all the games? So that for me, Cooper Kupp, after this last hamstring thing, I moved him like wide receiver 7. Rather have AJ Brown, rather have Tyreek Hill, like all these guys that just feel.
Whoa! You went through all that, and you moved him all the way down. I mean, cratered, right? Dropped out of the sky, according to Andrew Erickson, the way you were talking, all the way down to wide receiver 7.
Wide receiver 7.
Really, Andrew? That's the brave, courageous position that you've put Cooper Kupp. What about outside the top 10? How about just put him on your do not draft list? Like, why would you draft him at this point? How could you possibly draft him over Devontae Adams, for example?
Yeah, no, I mean, Adams is probably much of a safer pick, even though Jimmy Garoppolo is, he can't stay healthy either, but at least you'll know he'll be productive when Jimmy G's out there.
Yeah. I mean, it's a very similar situation. Basically, the Raiders are the Rams of the AFC. Looking back at Larry Fitzgerald, just for the record, age 29 season, 800 yards, 4 touchdowns, 11.2 yards per reception. And then age 31 season, also 800 yards, and that year 2 touchdowns. And then he bounced back age 32. Guy put up 1,200 yards and 9 touchdowns. So it's not over in Dynasty. Cooper Kupp can bounce back and find health and get a quarterback upgrade, an offensive line upgrade. Maybe goes to a new team. it's possible this whole team just completely bottoms out. McVay's gone. Stafford retires. Things can all turn over like what happened with Larry Fitzgerald, and then he's back, right? He's back. Oh, there's Kurt Warner coming in to save him at the end. That could absolutely happen. So it's not over for Kupp in Dynasty, though he is moving down. I just think that it's an interesting position where I'm seeing people saying, oh, I still think he's fine for redraft. He might miss a game or two, but in Dynasty, this really scares me. I'm the opposite. This terrifies me for this year, but because I've lived through the Larry Fitzgerald experience, I'm not as worried because I know he's going to be back next year and potentially in a better team situation. And the chat has a lot of quarterbacks for us. You ready for this? It's not Ryan Lindsley. It was Ryan Lindley. So it was very similar. I mean, this guy's name was shockingly close to the center for the Chargers. It was Ryan Lindley. So I feel much better about myself. I was like, man, I don't know. Am I even close on this? I was actually super close. We talked about Drew Stanton. Then we have Josh McCown, John Skelton, Logan Thomas, Derek Anderson. It's very problematic.
John Skelton sounds like an actor on like a bad 80s sitcom. Like,
oh yeah,
John
Skelton. Yeah, John Skelton, Max Hall, Matt Leinart. it's really bad.
Oh, Leinart.
It's just very bad. Like there's just a lot. Thank you for the chat. I'm throwing them up on YouTube. We're live on YouTube, and I'm throwing up all these answers. Everyone, thank you very much for helping to contribute. It's fascinating, man. It's fascinating what's going on with Cooper Kupp. It opens up opportunity for Van Jefferson. I know people want to get creative, and they want to talk themselves into rostering Puka Nacua and Tutu Atwell, and for all the reasons why it's hard for me to even get excited about Jacoby Myers. Jacoby Myers has proven himself to be a target commander, unlike Tutu Atwell, unlike Puka Nacua, and even him as the non-number one option, right? The non-alpha in the passing game. I'm just not that interested in these bottom 5, bottom 10 even offenses around the league. There's not enough food being served at the table for the number 2 through number 5 receivers to eat. It really becomes all about the number 1 guys. Same logic applies if you're going to be drafting a Titans receiver. That's why you would draft Hopkins at ADP over Burks, right? It's the same logic. It's the same logic ladder when you go down the board with these bad teams. The chat really wants us to talk about Puka, really wants us to talk about Tutu. Do you want to talk about them in any format? Are you interested?
Not really. No, because I think that we're trying to find opportunity, right? But what do we know about wide receivers? Efficiency matters more. Like, how good are you actually a receiver? So Van Jefferson can run all the routes. Like, he's been running all the routes since he got to the NFL. And what has he been? Nothing. Like, he hasn't done anything. Yeah, he hasn't done anything. So,
well, he did. He led the league. He led the league. He was number 1 in the league. You kidding me? He was number 1 2 years ago. Number 1 in the league and drops.
Drops, exactly, because he's running so many routes. He's tired.
He led the league.
He's tired from doing all the sprinting. He can't get his hands up in time when the ball's coming his way. So I know that Derek Brown from Fantasy Pros loves Puka Nacua. It's someone that we took with one of our last picks in a high stakes draft that we did, because he was really trying to get me on Puka, and he was productive at the college level. He's interesting, and he should see type of Thor Nystrom actually mentioned him as kind of like a poor man's Deebo Samuel. That was kind of his comp for a Puka Nacua, which I thought was kind of interesting. So, but we'll see.
My issue with a poor man's Deebo Samuel is that Deebo Samuel is only Deebo Samuel because he's so athletic, and Puka's not. Puka's a sub-athlete. So now you're saying you've got to I got to see it to believe it, right? I got to see it to believe it. Jarvis Landry without the draft capital, I mean, that's maybe what he is. So that would be the best comp. Certainly not Deebo Samuel. Deebo Samuel's explosive. If you want a sub-athlete that you could comp him to, it would be Jarvis Landry, Willie Snead. He's probably more Willie Snead than Jarvis Landry, but Willie Snead had like a 900-yard season with the Saints. Like, that is absolutely in Puka Nakua's range of outcomes, a nice 900-yard season, and he's just fine, and he's going to retain great value in best ball. No question. That's out there for him. Maybe not this year, because this year it's inverted. The problem is with rookies, you'd rather them get their opportunity later in the season and let them get acclimated, where it's inverted with Puka. He's going to get his maximum opportunity early and then potentially have to, continue to earn those targets as the season goes along once Kupp comes back. I don't love that sequence of events that he's going to have to pull off at his low athleticism score on Player Profiler. I just don't see it, but I appreciate Thor. Thor's the king, man. I'm watching Hard Knocks, and they're, they keep flashing to this relationship between Zach Wilson and Aaron Rodgers. It's fascinating. It's fun. And I just keep thinking about Thor and how he just tore Zach Wilson apart pre-draft on these airwaves. And that was one of the great shows of all time because it was so prescient. And for the guy to go with the second overall pick, it just chills when I think about that.
Yeah, no, the thing I remember most about that particular show was the fact that, one of Thor's better points was the fact that he literally played nobody. Like, he did not play a single good team at BYU, and the only reason he got pumped was because half the teams weren't playing because of COVID. So it's like, what games are on? Oh, BYU. Like, BYU is the only thing that's on. So NFL scouts are just like, well, might as well just watch BYU play this team that no one is going to go to the NFL, and this quarterback, he looks good against who they're playing. It doesn't matter. Like,
I can tell you who it was. It was South Carolina State. That's a real thing that happened. That games against South Carolina State got this guy a pick number 2, and then the very next guy was playing teams in the Midwest that no one's heard of for 1 year only, and then he went number 3 overall, and then the guy that everyone knew was a premium blue chip prospect was head-to-head with Trevor Lawrence every season in college football, and then suddenly decided everyone just forgot he existed until the 10th or 11th pick. One of the more, in hindsight, to see Justin Fields go at 10-11 with back-to-back Zach Wilson, Trey Lance, you have to go back to Mitch Trubisky going at 2, and then Watson and Mahomes slipping to 10-11. So we've seen this before. This movie has literally played before in the NFL draft, but to see it played again was just fascinating. I was like, wow, so they're going to do 2 of these guys, 2 of these small school guys that didn't play anybody. They're going to move 2 of these guys ahead of the premium blue chip no-brainer guy. Okay, cool. NFL, do what you do, please, by all means. Don't let me get logic and just common sense. A Thor comes on and it's just common sense takes. And people, if you consume enough NFL draft content for months, your brain gets just rewired and common sense is gone. You suddenly think that this guy that didn't play anybody is a lock, and that NFL teams are right to put him in the top 3. It's like, wait.
Yeah, those are the guys that you want to take when you're in the later rounds. Like, for example, a Puka Nacua. He didn't play a lot of really intense competition, which is why he was a 5th-round pick. He was super productive, but that was weighed into his draft capital by the NFL. They didn't take him in the second round when he's not playing anybody good. It's no, we have to, tox his draft capital a little bit here, move him down into day 3. But, okay, if he hits at the NFL level, well, he was really productive. And, okay, it wasn't just the competition he was facing. He was actually good. But don't take that risk in the first and second round. And that's what NFL teams keep doing to themselves when there's prospects that, like a Justin Fields, staring them right in the face, who's playing in the Big Ten and all these championship games left and right. It's we'd rather take Denver and Carolina. They both took cornerbacks instead of taking quarterback. Maybe they have their answers now. Denver, who knows what they're doing long-term with Russell Wilson, but, Carolina seems like they figured out their quarterback. But who knows? Bryce Young.
Whoa. Did they, though?
Yeah.
Did they? Because, again, I'm watching Hard Knocks, And Aaron Rodgers, here's the thing. If you're watching Hard Knocks at all, and I suggest it very highly, watch it on HBO, which has become Max, right? So that's just as bad, by the way. HBO, you're just as bad. You're just as bad. HBO, the brand HBO, known as the top of the mountain for premium television content. Going all the way back to when I was a kid, and then right, that the static would come on, and then the HBO logo would form on the screen, and then the Sopranos are on, and you hear that just iconic Sopranos theme song, and you know this is premium content. This is the best of television. That's HBO. To just throw it away and just rename it Max because it's now more than HBO. We want to jam CNN content no one's watching or cares about into your feed. We want to distract you with CNN content. We can't just be about great shows. It can't just be about the best shows about dragons of all time. No, it can't be White Lotus. No, it can't just be great shows that you enjoy and you love. It can't be iconic best shows of all time like The Wire. It can't just be that. We have to insert turds into your nightly television viewing experience. We can't let you unwind at night without having just turds put on in your face. We're not going to let that. So it's the same disease. I just feel like whoever rebranded HBO Max and then whoever rebranded Twitter X, they need to get together and then just, I don't know, maybe change their minds. Someone like talk some sense into them, like do something and get our brands back that we love, please. Thank you. And if you're watching HBO Hard Knocks, which again, thankfully they haven't changed the narrator. It's still Liev Schreiber, who's amazing. Best narrator ever. I just get chills when I listen to him. They're on the field together. Aaron Rodgers and Aaron Rodgers isn't tall. Like he's 6'2" on Player Profiler. You know he's not 6'2". He was not even 6'2" when he was drafted. He was 6'1" and a half maybe. And that was 10 years ago, right? And all of us shrink over time. He's probably more like 6 feet at this point. Aaron Rodgers, 6 feet, 6'1.5". Him standing next to Bryce Young was jarring to me. And I'm watching it with my daughter because it's cool. She likes to play football. Like she likes to play soccer and she likes to watch the NFL. She doesn't want to watch soccer. She wants to watch the NFL, but then she wants to play soccer outside, which I love. I think that's perfect, right? So she's like, can we watch Hard Knocks tonight? I'm like, yes, episode 2. So we're watching it. And then she doesn't know who Bryce Young is. And then they're on the field together, and Bryce Young comes up to Aaron Rodgers' like breastplate. And she goes, who is that guy? What position does he play? He's tiny. Is he the kicker? And I'm like, no, it's a long story, but they said he was 6 feet, but he was actually 5'11", but more like 5'10", but actually 5'9", if not 5'8". And his father trained him to ace this intelligence and mental processing test that they now give quarterbacks, this brand new test. And he came out and he aced it and basically fooled all these NFL evaluators that he was actually better than the guy that put up better stats and was clearly bigger and was more mobile. And then, and also there was a complete sort of generational, once a decade talent at quarterback that went a couple picks even later than that they passed on for this guy because his dad helped train him for a test. And then they also talked to his coach, who's very well regarded as a legend in the business. And so the coach advocated for him. Then he aced this information processing test and went 101. And the real kick in the nuts, that's what I said to her. So the real kick in the nuts was that they had a deal done at the very last minute. Carolina said, hey, you know what? We'll just throw in DJ Moore because. So they threw in their best receiver just because. You see that guy that's talking to that guy, Adam Thielen? Yeah, he's dust. He is dust. They got nobody. they got nobody. If you think Jonathan Mingo is the solution at wide receiver, well, I got some oceanfront real estate in Kansas to sell you. Okay, so that is just another example of NFL front offices focusing on the wrong details and setting their franchise back another 5 years, because it wasn't just the bad draft pick of Bryce Young. It was also all the picks they had to give up. So now it's such a long road. If Bryce Young is not this outlier going back to what? Drew Brees? If he's not a once every 20 years outlier, then it's a 5-year rebuilding cycle that they hit the reset button on.
Yeah, it's gonna be tough. Like, the offensive line has looked really shaky during the preseason games, and you're hoping that it's going to gel during the regular season. Can you see over the offensive lineman? We still don't know. And again, like, he needs weapons. Like, if you don't have any weapons to work with, like, what are you really expecting him to do? It's not just, oh, you're just going to facilitate the offense, get your guys the ball, they'll make plays. Like, who is he relying on? Like, again, you mentioned Thielen, Dust, DJ Chark. Is he healthy? Is he already injured? And Mingo is an incomplete prospect. Like, he basically did no production at Ole Miss. Like, he
couldn't separate.
Yeah, so there's a big issue with, can he be reliable? Like, it's hard. It's really hard to buy into Bryce Young.
You know what? I like to just think about the physics of what we're talking about, right? So
there he goes.
We got a football here. Okay, we got a football here. So I got a football. I'm Bryce Young. Okay, so let's actually not think about the stats, not think about the metrics at all. Okay, I'm Bryce Young, so let me prepare to be Bryce Young. Okay, so I'm Bryce Young. Okay, and I can't see anything. I can't see anything, and I don't have the quickness of a Kyler Murray and the sort of the micro processing lower body to just wiggle my body into just the right position to throw the ball at the right angle at the right time, or the escapability of a Kyler Murray or a Russell Wilson when things break down. So I really need my offensive line to create these throwing lanes, and their offensive line's not prepared to do that. And then I also need to have experienced wide receivers that are in their prime, that have experience with me, so that I can throw the ball on time, even though I can't see them. I have to be able to arc this ball up and over my linemen or through this keyhole of a space that they've created for me. And then I have to know intuitively where these receivers are going to be because I can't see them. So it's all based on feel and instinct and experience and timing, with Jonathan Mingo, who proved that he was one of the worst separators of any wide receiver in this class at the college level, a dusty Adam Thielen who can barely get off the line of scrimmage, a DJ Chark who can't get off the trainer's table, and a Terrace Marshall. Last time we saw him, he was riding in a cart off the field. This is the Carolina Panthers offense. This is why Billy was telling me, hey, if we're going to draft anybody on this team, in tight end premium, it's going to be Hayden Hurst. The one guy on this team that's actually going to get any targets is going to be Hayden Hurst, because I'm down here, right? I'm down here and I'm looking around, and then I can't find anybody. The timing's off with all these guys, and then I'm going to go to Hurst.
That's the play. Hayden Hurst. Get him late in tight end.
That's it. Tight end premium. That's the only move. I wish I had better news for Carolina Panthers fans. I really do. But we went live. I remember we were driving, and the trade came down that they were just going to also throw in DJ Moore for no reason, and just one of these horrific, overpay trade ups to get a quarterback that has no business going 101, and then also throw in your best in one of the most underrated wide receivers. And I just remember it was on back then. This platform was called Twitter, and they have something called Spaces, where, what happened there was the Twitter people decided to rip off another app called Clubhouse, and they created this new functionality called Spaces. And then so we did a Twitter Spaces, and it was me and Anand and a whole bunch of people. It was Cody Carpentier, it was Billy, and all bemoaning this trade, just horrific. And now we're all going to see the consequence of it. We're all going to get to watch it play out, where it makes sense. You're in these high stakes FFPC drafts. We did a live high stakes FFPC draft last night, and almost every team drafts 2 quarterbacks. Some of them draft 3, even though it's single quarterback. They just draft a lot of quarterbacks. I can't quite figure it out. Desmond Ridder gets drafted in a lot of these drafts. Desmond Ridder. So there are formats where Desmond Ridder goes in single quarterback because he has some rushing upside and he has some weapons. The guy that no one is touching, no one is drafting, is Bryce Young.
Yeah, Bryce Young was actually ranked pretty high. I think I was looking at like season-long leagues in terms of like your home league, ESPN, Yahoo, like their aggregate ADP. And, usually it's pretty standard. There's a couple guys that stand out. Aaron Rodgers is usually pretty overrated in home leagues, like going as like the QB12, where I wouldn't touch him with a 10-foot pole because he's 40 years old, not touching that guy behind the Jets offensive line. And then I saw Bryce Young was like QB19. So like people were drafting Bryce Young based on like ESPN ADP as like a backup quarterback. And I'm like, what are we doing here? Like you can't draft him inside the top 20 quarterbacks. So Bryce Young was going there because of he's drafted number 1 overall. Like that's what people see, these casual league. They're drafting Bryce Young as like a backup quarterback.
What is the game flow? Explain this to me. Explain the game flow, right? Drive by drive, quarter by quarter. What do you think when you close your eyes? How do you think it's going to play out for this offense? Where are these fantasy points going to come from? How is the drive going to play out where at the end of it, you're going to look up and there's Bryce Young with 20 fantasy points? It's not possible. There's going to be a game or two where he puts up 20 fantasy points, but it's also interesting that the guy he was talking to, in the middle of the field there on Hard Knocks had zero games last year with 20 fantasy points. I mean, it's almost like a riddle. Like if you watch Hard Knocks and you hear the hype that these coaches are building around Aaron Rodgers, it's incongruent. It's impossible it's a complete mind fuck that he actually didn't put up even a 20-point game last year. And they're talking about him like he's the greatest thrower of footballs of all time and that it's going to revolutionize this offense like no one's ever seen.
Yeah, you get yourself into dangerous situations when you put players on pedestals, right? They're like worshiping him like he's a god because their quarterbacks have been so immortal and so horrible up to this point that they're
so
willing
mortal,
to
right?
They're willing to do whatever it takes, and that's what the GMs talked about. Like, we're going to do whatever it takes to get Aaron Rodgers. We're going to trade away Elijah Moore. We don't care. Like, we're going to do whatever it takes to get this guy on the field. He wants Randall Cobb. He wants Al Lazard. He doesn't want Corey Davis anymore. Like, we're going to get rid of those guys. Like, it's all for him. And I just think that when you do that, it doesn't usually work out. Like, that doesn't usually happen. Things aren't going to just, oh, yeah, it worked out. I'm really going to look up after the season and be like, oh, wow, the Jets were so right. It was perfect. Their defense is just as good as it was last year. Aaron Rodgers finds the fountain of youth. Garrett Wilson catches 20 touchdowns. It all works out. That's not going to happen. There's no way.
Oh, here's the thing. Like, and this is I think, a piece of advice I want to give everybody in the audience. And reading between the lines is an incredibly valuable skill when consuming NFL content, unlike any other sport, right? There is so much there between the lines if you just pay attention and you know what to look for. So you're watching Hard Knocks, right? And on the surface, you're like, wow, this offense is going to be so much better. Look how much better Aaron Rodgers is than Zach Wilson, and he's throwing these dimes over the shoulder, and this offense is going to be a complete rejuvenated mega force, right? This is the message we're getting from Hard Knocks. What I got out of it, what I get when I watch Quentin Williams and Sauce Gardner and I watch Hard Knocks, what I get out of it is this team is not going to produce a goddamn thing for fantasy football because their defense is too good. That's what when I'm watching it and people are getting excited about the team and the New York fans are getting excited. I agree. You should be excited. This is going to be a better team. They're going to win a bunch of games. Yeah, they're going to win a bunch of games 10-9. they're going to win a bunch of low-scoring games. They're going to drag every game into the mud. What were these games you saw in preseason? This is what we're talking about. It's 13-3. If you want a bunch of 13-3 games, you're going to get that from the Jets. That's not how you score fantasy points. When they're salting the game away in the fourth quarter, and up to that point, Aaron Rodgers drained the clock on every single play, how is Garrett Wilson going to get there? How? I want to know. I love him, and I'm excited about him, and you should be excited. He's a great talent. But how? How are these players going to get there? Any of them. The only guy, again, this is another one of those teams where it's like, oh wow, they're the opposite. They're the opposite of the Rams, right? They're the opposite of the Panthers. This is a surging, improved, massively rejuvenated offense. And at the end of the day, to me, it's just like the Rams and just like the Panthers. They're going to be low volume. They're going to be low scoring. But in their particular case, it's because their defense is so good and Aaron Rodgers plays so slow. So the guys I want on those teams are Tyler Higbee, okay, and Tyler Conklin, right? It's the tight ends. It's in those particular teams. It's like the Texans. Who's got a clear shot to lead that team in targets? Dalton Schultz. It's like you've got some fringy, late round tight ends, and those are the guys that could pop with touchdowns, and they may be interesting for fantasy, especially Tyler Higbee. With the injury to Cooper Kupp, Tyler Higbee becomes very interesting as a red zone monster and a target hog, potentially 100 targets. Right? So at the end of the day, you take all these offenses and you're like, you know what? I will surgically grab the tight end, and then after, a Hayden Hurst, and then after that, you really have to talk me into it, because the choice is going to be ultimately in whatever round between player X on the Jets, on the Rams, on the Panthers, and player Y on an offense that's going to be incentivized to throw more, pass more, score more.
Yeah, does you more help to your fantasy team to hit on the tight end that emerges out of the group of wide receivers? Like, having Higbee be that Rams target leader is more helpful to your actual roster than if Puka or Tutu or Van Jefferson, if any of those guys starts getting targets, like, okay, you're going to start them as your wide receiver 3 that you drafted as your wide receiver 7. Like, where's a scenario where you're going to start those guys and feel good about them? Whereas Higbee, hey, I went late round tight end. I need to start a tight end this week. I'm streaming. Oh, Higbee is getting 8, 9, 10 targets a week because the Rams are getting blown out, because who knows who. Can you name Rams defensive players besides Aaron Donald?
Don't even.
like their defense is totally revamped, totally overturned from last year. They have the youngest team in the league. Matthew Stafford can't connect with these guys. He doesn't know how to talk to them because they're not on He's not on Facebook. He's not on TikTok. He's not on all the apps.
Wait, no, he's on Facebook and they're on TikTok.
Snapface, as Bill Belichick made famous one time.
Snapface.
So, I mean, you can see the Rams players trolling Stafford and be like, hey, man, add me on Snapface. Check it out, snapface.com. And Stafford's going to go home, log on, and be like, this doesn't exist. I can't believe I fell for it. So Higbee, I think, is like a souped-up version of Dalton Schultz, where Schultz really stumbled into production the last couple of years because he was a high player, or he was playing in a high-paced offense, a lot of passing attempts, and he had a great role with Dak Prescott. But Schultz is also the profile of the catch and fall down tight end. Like, he catches it, falls down, doesn't do anything else. Where Higbee offers a lot more juice, I think, after the catch than a player like a Dalton Schultz. So even if Matthew Stafford is inefficient and Higbee's not necessarily connecting on a lot of touchdowns, there are plays, we've seen it before, Higbee is catching the ball underneath, making a guy miss, and picking up yardage. That's not something that Schultz really ever did. So I think Tyler Higbee, again, someone that was a top 10 tight end last year, PPR points per game, I think that he's a great late round option.
Yeah, he's great. Yeah, and it's also interesting with this Cooper Kupp injury. It's rare that an injury to the running game would actually also hurt the passing game. You see this a lot with analysis that's bad, right? A lot of bad analysis is like, well, now that there's now that there's less weapons, the defense is going to focus more attention on receiver X, and that's actually going to hurt him. And it's like, no, man. The law of the conservation of targets proves over time to help that guy. Even if there's more attention, the targets will offset whatever loss of efficiency from the extra defensive attention. Don't worry about that shit, right? In this one instance, man, Kupp is so important to that offense and their ability to sustain drives that though it does mean more volume for Akers if Kupp is not out there, it hurts Akers because it's just it paralyzes the offense, so he's just not going to have the red zone looks. So as soon as I saw that Kupp injury reoccurrence, I also crossed off Akers off my list.
No, I think that's right. You know, we can be more particular with some of these later running backs that all have glaring issues kind of up and down the board. So it's like, okay, which guy do I either get the cheapest or which one do I feel the less queasy about drafting when it comes to what is their downside in their profile? And this hurts Akers. Again, you mentioned it. He's not going to see as many red zone opportunities. And I think we still expect him to be that touch monster, but does he have that receiving profile? Like, that's kind of what we still don't really know necessarily. Is it going to be Kyren Williams? Do they like him more? He hasn't been playing in the preseason. So is he going to be third down back? And it's really hard to go in, be super bullish on Akers when we saw last year, the dude didn't even start week one.
But when he was out there, he was not adding value as a receiver at all. Like, we haven't seen him add value to a football team as a receiver since Florida State.
Yeah. So that's the concerns with Cam Akers, where he would move down, especially when you can draft him, get guys later like Rachaad White, who I have tons of confidence he's going to be using the passing game for a Tampa Bay Buccaneers offense that's going to be trailing in a ton of games. So, well,
you don't have to talk to me about. I intentionally didn't want to put like a Rachaad White question on the show sheet because I'm like, okay, the audience has heard enough about Rachaad White. We don't need to get into Rachaad White too much today, but now I'm hearing, of course, because when the narrative is set on a player, right, early, then everyone is just ready for some new bit of news or some new bit of information to regress back to the old narrative. And then the new information now is, Sean Tucker. Right, well, Sean Tucker's the number 2, and then that's a new threat. Now when it was Chase Edmonds and it was Keyshawn Vaughn, that wasn't a threat. Now Sean Tucker's a real threat. Get out of here. Okay, let me ask you the question. Late in drafts, I'm seeing these guys go at a similar ADP now. Similar profiles also. They're eerily similar players. Who do you like better this year and also in Dynasty? Ty Chandler or Sean Tucker?
Ty Chandler for me.
Easy,
I think
right?
It's easy. Alexander Mattison is the dead zone back of dead zone running backs. Like, come on. Like, it's not that hard to see all the connections between, okay, if you ask any projections guy, who does he love this year? Alexander Mattison. Dead zone back. There you go. Checks off the boxes. That's a dead zone back. It's all the projections.
Yeah, that's the same with Dalton Schultz. Dalton Schultz, the projections love Dalton Schultz because the targets have to go to somebody. And Dalton Schultz actually did command targets in the league at some point in his life. And so the projection machine has to give him a bunch of targets. So, yes, Alexander Mattison, absolutely. He's the Dalton Schultz of running backs. I think I made that up just now on the fly right there. Boom, there it is. There's the nickname for Alexander Mattison. I like that. He's the Dalton Schultz of running backs. It's not that Dalton Schultz is the Alexander Mattison of tight ends. He is not. But I do love the idea of going up to his locker, right, in Minnesota and being, hey, what do you think of what people are saying that you're the Dalton Schultz of running backs? Just to see Alexander Madison's face. That was one of the fun things about going to the Senior Bowl was I got to put questions out there, uncomfortable questions out there. Just see these guys' reaction, right? As I said, do you think they should change the rules of the Senior Bowl so that the cornerbacks are less physical to give you guys a chance to actually make plays? And Jonathan Mingo, he wanted to hurt me. It was great. I was like, got the face. J.K. Dobbins, he actually had one of the best receiving profiles of any running back a couple of years ago in his rookie year when he was super explosive. It seemed like he took every screenplay for a touchdown. It's interesting to see what's happening. Keaton Mitchell going to IR. Gus Edwards is dust. Dobbins in his prime. It's when I think about Akers and Dobbins, I always think of them in always the same because of the same draft class. Really impressive all-purpose profiles coming out of college, second-round picks. But it seems like Dobbins has been unlucky but good, whereas Akers has been unlucky and bad. So what do you make of Dobbins?
Yeah, I kind of viewed them in a similar tier when I first did my rankings for this year. They were very closely ranked to each other because I liked some of their upside. I liked how Akers could be a bell cow, but I also thought Dobbins has this massive touchdown ceiling in a similar vein to what we saw with Mark Ingram. The last time we saw this Ravens offense like absolutely humming with Lamar Jackson, Mark Ingram was RB8 overall and in points per game. Like he was a top 10 fantasy running back at age 30. A 30-year-old Mark Ingram was a top 10 fantasy running back. And the fact that you can get Dobbins.
Is that happened?
Yeah. Mark Ingram, 30 years old,
Wow.
top 10 running back. And why did he get there? Because he scored 15 touchdowns. Like, that's why he was super efficient. And like you said, with Dobbins, Mark Ingram that year caught 5 receiving touchdowns because he kept ripping off these screen passes to the house. So if there's anyone that's going to do that this year, it would be J.K. Dobbins.
Yes.
So is his volume going to be insane as a receiver? No. I'm not expecting him to just like rack up targets left and right. But when he does get targeted and the defense is worrying about all the other receivers that are not named Devin Duvernay outside of the field that actually are legitimate threats, Dobbins is going to have space to run, and his yards after the catch per reception is probably going to lead the league, honestly, with J.K. Dobbins. So I'm excited about Dobbins. And the fact that I think it's overlooked is he's a free agent at the end of this year. The Ravens have all the incentive in the world. It's like, hey, man, you want to earn a contract? Stay healthy this whole year. We're going to give you all the work. Go earn it. And then they can just churn and burn him if they want to. So I think Dobbins is where he goes in drafts because he fell in drafts after this like weird hold-in thing, and then it never really came back up. Like everyone's like, oh, is he like healthy? Is he like injured? Like we don't really know. He's on the pup. He's not on the pup. And then his ADP like never recovered. So
it was a fake injury.
Yeah. So
he's fine. He's fine, but people have been so burned by and so concerned about his lower body and the health that they're shook by that inappropriately. He goes right at pick 60 at the FFPC, which again is tight end premium, so he goes a touch earlier. In traditional leagues, he goes about there also, maybe even a little bit later in Underdog, because in Underdog you want to draft multiple tight ends, you want to draft multiple quarterbacks, and wide receiver is such a premium, so that maybe a little bit later in best ball. But Dobbins is why he's hit. Dobbins and Rachaad White are why I love late draft position, because when you have the 110, 111, 112 in the 5th round, you're drafting at the end of the 5th round, and that's when he goes. And then guess who goes at the beginning of the 6th round? Rachaad White. Right? So you could start conceivably very easily and very straightforwardly, assuming you want to, push quarterback and tight end, which I'm happy doing, right? You can start 4 receivers easily, then double tap running back with Dobbins and White, still get a firewall tight end like a Freiermuth or an Evan Ingram, and then all you need to figure out is a late round quarterback. And you're set. Tell me that's not a good build.
Oh, I think it's a great build. It's why Rachaad White is one of my most drafted running backs. Same thing with J.K. Dobbins. Because
and this is why you love, if you're picking like a draft position, give me the 109, give me the 110, baby, because I can also get Amon-Ra at that spot.
You get Amon-Ra, you get A.J. Brown, you can mix in some Nick Chubb. Like, it's all of the guys.
No, you don't even want a running back there. I just want Amon-Ra, and then I'd even move up, and then you could go. Depends on what you like, right? You can go if you think that Aaron Rodgers is going to be a different guy this year, you can go Garrett Wilson. But you know what's happening in high stakes right now. Olave's moving up into the early 2nd. Chris Olave moving up into the early 2nd in high stakes. It is a thing. I'm getting reports in my ear from Vegas This is what's happening.
I don't like it. It's too expensive for me.
Okay. All right. That's fair, I guess. I think that if you have the air yards and you have the efficiency and you have a big quarterback upgrade, that this is the quarterback upgrade that actually matters more than Garrett Wilson, because Garrett Wilson's quarterback upgrade is offset by the lower volume. They were airing it out. There were games I look up. Mike White's got 60 pass attempts. Right? It was huge volume, huge inefficient volume. Then you bring in Rodgers, it's going to be lower volume, more efficiency. Well, there's an offsetting force there. Whereas in New Orleans, it's going to be actually more efficient and potentially more volume. Right? So then now you have a guy going into his second year putting up equally impressive air yards and, yards per route run as Garrett Wilson. I've always believed and maintained this position that that should be a decision point in drafts. It shouldn't be a slam dunk where Olave is going a full round later than Wilson. I always thought that was false, and now we're seeing the correction happening in real time right now.
I don't think Derek Carr is that good. I really don't. I don't think he's a massive upgrade. I mean, what do the advanced metrics say about Andy Dalton last year? Wasn't he good?
I don't have those in front of me.
Okay.
I have to admit, I have most metrics committed to memory. Fair. I could pull it up. Of course, I have Player Profiler up on my screen. I always do. Everyone should and probably does. I could type in Andy Dalton, ANDY space DA. I'm not going to do it. I'll take your word for it. Whatever you think he did, he did. Okay. All I know is Derek Carr had 4 straight 4,000-yard seasons, and he was a fantasy producer and supported other fantasy options around him, and he even supported Hunter Renfrow. Right? If he can support Hunter Renfrow, he can support Chris Olave. And if your problem is his ability to be prolific, then just don't draft Michael Thomas, don't draft the other receivers, don't draft Juwan Johnson. I don't care, but I am going for the number one. I am going with the number one option. So and I've been touting, and Chris Olave was my wide receiver 1 last year, and this is not take lock. It's just that he didn't do anything. Like, if I had him here next to me, I'd be like, hey, Chris, how did last year go? And he'd be like, well, honestly, Podfather, I think I did everything that you would have asked me to support your number 1 ranking in that class. And I look at the advanced metrics and I see all the air yards and the air yard share and everything and all the per snap and per route run efficiency on Player Profile. I'd be like, yep, you're right. No reason for me to change my opinion now. And he's like, thank you for believing in me. And I'm like, thank you, Chris.
I mean, my concern is the touchdowns. So he had 4 touchdowns last year. He had less targets inside the 10-yard line than Michael Thomas did. Michael Thomas played 3 games last year. So who is Derek Carr's favorite red zone option? Is it Juwan Johnson? Is it Jimmy Graham? Is it Jamal Williams? Is it Taysom Hill? Like
I can't believe you said Jimmy Graham. I forgot about Jimmy Graham.
Yeah, but they have all of these touchdown. They're collecting touchdown vultures. That's what they're doing on offense, and that's a scary proposition for me. Where I feel pretty confident that when the Jets are in the red zone, it is going to be Garrett Wilson. It's either him or Conklin. It's not Lazard. It's not Hardman. It's going to be one of those guys where Olave didn't get red zone looks. They were not setting him up in the red zone last year.
All right.
So why does that change?
Good news, Andrew. This show's very popular, and we attract a huge audience, even live. And we've got almost 200 people live right now, and we also have Who Dat Dude in Me. So Who Dat Dude in Me is from New Orleans. He has a New Orleans logo in his avatar. And he's telling us that Olave had by far and away the best training camp of anyone on the team. Not receivers. He was a complete and utter beast, right? Just like if you're watching Hard Knocks and Quentin Williams is having the best training camp, it's actually Olave. And he also says that Juwan Johnson's a big-time sleeper, but he didn't spell Juwan Johnson right, so I have to remove that right now because now I'm embarrassed that I was sharing his comments. I wish him all the best in his spelling in the future. There's going to be a lot of points scored on this team based on what happened with Andy Dalton last year and Taysom Hill. I mean, everything is teeing up for this except the fact that the other teams in the division can't push them. That's the only thing holding the Saints back this year, is that the other teams are going to drag them into the mud. They're going to try to drag them into the mud. They're going to drag them into the mud. And that's going to be the one sort of governing force holding back the Saints' production. But if you're the best offense in a division and your wide receiver is the best player, period, the best football player on the team, it's a Devontae Adams situation. I think where the offense may not be as prolific as we would like, but he is the one eating at the trough. He's the one getting the big piece of chicken at dinner.
Big piece. The leg or the thigh? Like just this giant, enormous
the
piece
breast,
of chicken?
Bro. The breast. He's Chris Olave is eating the breast.
I'm more of a chicken thighs guy myself. Chicken breast can be quite it's not juicy as much sometimes, and sometimes you get a little dry. Chicken thighs though, never dry.
You're not wrong. I also believe in the Steelers in a way that Steelers are not like, oh, I loved them last year. No, I've despised the Steelers for multiple years, right? You had basically Big Ben. My comp for Big Ben was one of those skyscrapers that they're about to demo, right? One of those buildings where they have the fencing around the building and it's condemned and no one's allowed in there, but some people break in and camp out in there, but basically they're going to demo the thing and they're going to bring the building down soon. So that's what he was in his final year with the Steelers, and somehow people remember they were propping him up, right? But he would look like a skyscraper running. That's why I also think that's funny. So he was a rundown skyscraper, and I was like, why are you investing in this team? Stop. Knock it off. Their offensive line's not good either. So what do you want? What do you think's going to happen? Close your eyes. What do you think's going to happen? It's the same thing last year. It's a rookie quarterback. Close your eyes. What do you think's going to happen? Oh, Deontay Johnson's going to have 0 touchdowns. That's what's going to happen, right? But now it took 2 years for this idea that the Steelers' offense was unassailable. Everyone finally processed and internalized this idea that they're not what they were, and now they've overcorrected. And now I'm back. Now I'm like, well, no, I'm looking at this clinically and objectively. It's you all that are helmet chasing. This team is actually poised to exceed expectations better than any other team. And this is the year you choose to finally get off them? Is this your perception of the industry analysis around the Steelers?
I'd say so. Yeah, I think that there's more pessimism around them than optimism when I see so many paths to fantasy production, from the quarterback to some of the running backs, the receivers and tight ends. And I mean, put my money where my mouth. I mean, I bet MVP Kenny Pickett.
Hey! That's what I like to see. Woo-hoo! Yes. Oh man, he is a throwback. He is like a Kenny Stabler. That's what I think of him like. I think of him like a Raiders quarterback from the 70s. That's what I think about Kenneth Pickett Sr. That's what we're going to see. Just tactically scrambling, giving these first downs, sustaining the drives, rolling out, putting his hand out to over the pylon for the touchdown, the rushing production. I mean, that is the most underreported projected fantasy stat of the offseason, are the Pickett rushing yards and touchdowns.
Yeah, I think that he's in a world where every mobile quarterback is priced up the board. Every single one. Like, you can't get a discount anywhere.
Nope.
Kenny Pickett. There he is. Available to you every single time in the late round. And I just click him every single time. It's like he checks off all the boxes of a late round quarterback that you want to draft. Upgrade offensive line. Weapons that you can make plays in the passing game. He runs. He has a big arm. All he's done in the preseason is average 10 yards per attempt. What are we missing?
Looked great And all the reports from camp are that there's very few quarterbacks around the league. Like, you got a Dak Prescott, you got a Jalen Hurts. Very few quarterbacks around have the command of the offense like he has. And that to me matters. That to me matters. The respect of your teammates, the respect of the coaches. Because also, in the moment, they're not going to punt. They're going to let him go for it on fourth down. They're going to put the keys in his hands. He's going to call exactly what he wants to call. Like, he's going to call a pass play, right? It's going to be 4th and 3. They're going to let him choose what he wants to do, and he's going to call the play fake that he wants to run, right? And just like Josh Allen in the playoffs, where it's like, knock it off with these design runs. Let Josh Allen call the play he wants to call on fourth down and make it happen. Just get out of this man's way. And I think that's what's going to happen with the Steelers this year. We talked about late draft position, where you're drafting late first round, you're pounding wide receiver, 4X wide receiver in some cases, and then you're like, oh, I can still get Freiermuth after I double tap running back. Great. And then I need a quarterback. Oh, what do I do? This is why my most frequent stack is Freiermuth Pickett. I even have it in the Scott Fish Bowl. It's just what I have. I have, so that's the stack. That to me is the underrated stack. And I only say that because I have so much of it and no one cares at all about Pickett, Freiermuth. I'm like, well, guys, I think this is kind of a good one. Because also, and again, I hate doing this because you have to understand, Andrew knows this, okay? Andrew knows exactly what I'm talking about. There was a period of time when I would only look at spreadsheets and give you numbers off spreadsheets, and that was like my whole case, right? And now I have enough experience and I've seen enough games and I've seen enough things play out where I can start to visualize what the hell's going to happen. And so I certainly have the metrics in front of me, but I also know what's going to happen in real life. But what's going to happen in real life is Pickett is going to roll out, and then he's going to try to hit Pickens, and sometimes it's not going to be there in the red zone, right? It's just not. They're going to take Pickens away, okay? And then what is going to happen? It's going to be an option rollout, and the option is going to be, does Freiermuth flash in the back of the end zone, and he goes up and just like Dwight Clark, hits him in the back of the end zone like Dwight Clark, or he pulls it down and runs it in. You're going to get those 6 points one way or the other, right? And then you're hoping it's a pass because then you also get the 4 points from Pickett and the 6 points for the touchdown to Freiermuth. That is a play that is going to play out over and over and over again during the season. I'm just explaining how football works and why for fantasy, if you see that in your mind, you're like, well, I guess it's maybe the easiest stack of all time to get. And you're going to keep running into that scenario and all those fantasy points just piling up.
Yeah, and Pickett's going to have plenty of time to execute the play with Darnell Washington out there as that 6th offensive lineman blocking his way. Play action rollout, touchdown Pat Freiermuth. That's
really smart that you say that, because typically you get an athletic tight end, people get threatened by them, right? Like, oh man, is that going to hurt Freiermuth? Like, is this a target competition? I don't love this for Freiermuth. No, actually, he was athletic, but in a way that would also help him as a blocker. And this frees him up to run yet more routes, to be less responsible for hot pass rushers and more likely to go out on a route in any given play. So it's just one of those things where it's like, hey, an injury to Kupp actually hurts Akers. That's a weird thing, but in this particular scenario, it's what it is. You have to analyze it clinically and understand how that's going to play out in real life. In real life, adding tight end talent helps Freiermuth. It's counterintuitive, but it's true.
Yeah, I think that when competition comes and goes in certain offenses, you have to figure out, okay, what was the play originally on this player? Like, are you drafting this player because he's a volume guy? Okay, if there's now a chance for more volume, that's good. But if you're drafting a player because you're looking for efficiency, touchdowns, that's why the Darnell Washington addition is good for Pat Freiermuth, because it opens him up in the red zone and to see more volume as a receiver and not a blocker. So yes, it's easy to have overarching narratives about certain things that usually work in practice, but every situation does come with its own set of, okay, how can I adjust now what I'm thinking about it from an overarching standpoint to now this individual case?
It's very possible we look back in 4 or 5 months and we're slapping our foreheads like Pickett, Pickens, Freiermuth was just the sexiest three-way stack in terms of just value drafting, value-based upside. What about Geno Smith, Metcalf, Lockett?
I think I prefer Geno Smith, Metcalf, JSN.
Or Geno Smith, JSN, Lockett. So that's the combination you prefer the most. You prefer Geno Smith, Metcalf, JSN.
Yes, that's what I prefer.
Okay, because Lockett's been steamed up significantly. The JSN injury news pushed Lockett up 2 rounds in high stakes, and it only a half round for Metcalf because he was already drafted rounds higher.
Yeah, so for me, it's look, I'm betting. I want to bet on youth. I want to bet on a rookie entering the NFL, first round pick, guy who was super talented at Ohio State, super productive alongside alpha teammates, Garrett Wilson, and the aforementioned Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave. And when I just look at what Geno Smith does well, the super hyper accurate quarterback that needs somebody that can create yards after the catch. Tyler Lockett's 31. He's entering his 31-year-old season. Like, that's not really his game anymore. It's not really yards after the catch. I think Metcalf is still the touchdown monster that somehow gets by on candy and coffee as his diet. I don't know how he does it. He looks like a Greek god, but he still does it, and that's why I like drafting him. But JSN, for me, I think is the long play. And when you're looking in the playoffs, like, he's the guy that's getting 8, 9, 10 targets a game from the slot from Geno Smith.
Does he miss, 2 games, you think?
Yeah. I think that he's fine for the most part. And again, I think it's just a chance to buy. Like, it's a wrist injury, not is his hamstring, which is what he dealt with last year at Ohio State. Like, that would be more concerning because, this is why he missed the entire year of his last season of college. It's a wrist injury. And saw a video of him catching passes. Like, he's probably fine. And Pete Carroll is like super pessimistic. It usually means the guy's good to go and vice versa.
It played with me. It played with my mind, man. Their bye week being week 5, it just made too much sense based on how valuable he is for them to not play him until week 6. But then when you see the reports come out that he's not going on the IR and he's been catching passes, okay, that changes things. That's new information. Okay, now I go from projecting, a week 6 return to a week 3 return. That's the difference because he's not going on short-term IR. If they thought that was, it's a whole roster spot. It's a big deal for them to not want to lock in that roster spot. They're pretty comfortable and confident he's going to be back in the month of September. It's exciting. So let's talk briefly about late round wide receivers. There's a bunch of them for best ball. Seasonal leagues, traditional seasonal leagues with your friends and colleagues, probably not options, but these are guys to monitor week 1 and just see what their snap shares look like, see how many targets they're commanding. I've got a few in mind. I'm thinking Trey Palmer is the number 3 in Tampa. Calvin Austin, I want to see what his usage is. He's one of the guys I'm going to be monitoring the usage in week 1. Same thing with Jalen Tolbert. Jalen Tolbert vis-a-vis Michael Gallup will be interesting to monitor. A.T. Perry vis-a-vis Rashid Shaheed will be interesting to monitor in New Orleans. And then you got a guy that we know is locked into the number 2 spot in Mac Hollins, right? He's essentially Alan Lazard many rounds later. So when you look at these deep wide receiver sleepers, maybe Hollins has the least upside because of his situation. Drake London and Pitts are going to have to get the targets before he does, and there's just not going to be a lot of pass attempts there. But A, are you excited about any of the guys I just listed potentially? And B, are there guys I didn't list that you would like to add to that list?
So the only guy I'm probably most interested in is probably Trey Palmer because, is Mike Evans going to get traded? So that moves Trey Palmer up the pecking order in terms of, okay, now we have this explosive wide receiver where Chris Godwin's number 1, but not going to be that big play threat. Like, he is the de facto, hey, when this team is chucking the ball down by 14 points, like, it's Trey Palmer that's out there. So he can make plays on his own. So he's not so dependent on the quarterback play. He can make plays with his speed. So I like Trey Palmer. And I think a name that you forgot, as someone that grew up in the Worcester area, Holy Cross. Holy Cross's finest, Khalif Raymond, 29 years old. 29 years old. They extended him this offseason. Dan Campbell loves this guy. Like, how much they're frustrated with Jameson Williams is the opposite of how they feel about Khalif Raymond.
Oh,
He's
this is
a
such
grinder.
a good call. This is such a good call. This is why I have you on the show. This is why I asked this question.
I love Khalif Raymond because he's gone up the receiving pecking order because he balled out on special teams. He was a punt returner, super efficient last year as a punt returner. He can make plays with the ball in space. And last year, and this isn't even like I'm searching so deep to find like what metric he like pops off on. Last year, 23rd in yards per route run. 23rd. This guy's like ranked like wide receiver 80. And he's going to be a starter on this offense. Thursday night, Khalif Raymond's going to be out there starting in the slot. It's Amon-Ra St. Brown, who's going to drown in targets. But behind him, Khalif Raymond, man, I like him more than Reynolds. I like him more than Marvin Jones. Like, I don't have any confidence in those guys. Whereas Khalif Raymond, they love him. And I think he's going to be featured more than a lot of people are giving him credit for.
See, that's the guy. It's him and Trey Palmer. There's always going to be a couple guys that the last 3 or 4 rounds of these underdog drafts, you're trolling for who these guys are going to be. The guys that are the number 4, who's going to be the number 3, who's going to be the number 2, with deep speed for spike weeks. And that's Trey Palmer running the 4-3. That's Khalif Raymond running the 4-3. That's Calvin Austin running the 4-3. Those are the guys. Those guys, it's like, best ball, sure, that's a best ball receiver. Well, no, not just best ball. Yes, those are the quintessential late-round best ball options, right? They do look like best ball. There is a such thing as a best ball profile. Those guys have that. But there's going to be weeks with bye weeks and injuries where you're going to want to or need to plug in flex options. And you might as well plug in a flex option with big boom upside, right?
Exactly.
I mean,
I love it.
Why not? Why not? And speaking of underdog, we're about to get into 10 burning questions after this. About Underdog Fantasy. Now, many of you have already signed up. Thousands have signed up from Player Profiler already over the years. Underdog has supported us since 2020. Much of what you see on Player Profiler is because of Underdog, because of their support. Get the Underdog app, plug in that promo code UNDERWORLD. I used to play Underdog just for the best ball drafts. I mean, the best ball drafts are amazing. These draft rooms fill so quickly, and you can win life-changing money. You want to take advantage of all the sleepers we talk about on this show? Well, what better place than in an Underdog draft room to do that? And I recommend taking your Underdog play to the next level by diving into their NFL pick'ems. It's important to correlate those NFL pick'ems. You can pick both the quarterbacks and the wide receivers to exceed expectations. Correlate them, and you can 5x your payout. Bada bing, bada boom. Underdog Fantasy, the promo code is UNDERWORLD. For an instant deposit match up to $100, Underdog is the truest friend of the Underworld. Oh, baby. Are you ready? You love that, right? You love that. Let's go. 5, no. 6, no. 7, no. 8, no. 9, no. 10 burning questions. So in these best ball drafts, which QB other than Kenneth Pickett Sr. and maybe Geno Smith, those are mine, but any other quarterbacks that you're super exposed to in these best ball drafts, maybe Lamar Jackson, I'm trying to guess.
Yeah, Lamar Jackson is definitely my most of the expensive, like pricier guys that you have to pay up for. And then the other one
as he should be, but one more
is Jared Goff. That's the other guy. It's because it's a lot of Amon-Ra St. Brown, a lot of Khalif Raymond, and those are the places that I've kind of built stacks around, and especially with the Week 17 matchup against Dallas. It could be a shootout.
Please, 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 please. 6-pound, 8-ounce, tiny infant baby Jesus. Please. Please make Goff, Amon-Ra, Khalif Raymond stacks the thing that wins Best Ball Mania. Please. If there's any justice in the world, it would be Amon-Ra and Khalif Raymond joining forces like Batman and Robin and carrying Jared Goff. And then you look back at the Rams, and Goff is like doubling up Matthew Stafford's statistics, and Sean McVay is fired. Like this the redemption of Jared Goff after where he was, how bottomed out he was in the league. It would be so special for that. I just want that so badly. I want that so badly. Also, if I were like teaching a class on being a general manager, I think that it would be the perfect project, the perfect class project, to look at the current state of the Rams. And yes, it was a good idea to win a championship, and they did the right thing by going completely all in and trading every draft pick they had for the next 5 years. It's always worth it, right? When you're going against 32 other teams or 31 other teams, it's always worth it to go all in, right? Always, if you think you can do it. But it is also a funny case study, right? It's interesting and hilarious to look at the Rams now, and like the price you pay is you can't draft anybody. So then 3 years from the Super Bowl, your defense is a bunch of 6th and 7th rounders that can't stop anybody. There is a price to be paid long term. Like, it is real. There's not a way around it. There's not like you can't move the numbers around. You can't hire an accountant to fix it. It's not fixable. If you make that decision, it comes with this consequence where what you're going to see this year is going to be hilarious and horrific. 38-3. We're talking about games that are going to be just so lopsided. Like when the 49ers play the Rams, if the Eagles play the Rams, I don't know if they're on the schedule. It's going to be a shit show. And just thinking back that somehow there was a conversation at some point where they brought Jared Goff into the office and like, we're going to trade you. Right? You see this with Hard Knocks, right? They bring them into the office, like, we're going to release you. We're going to release you at 4 p.m. today. We're going to release you. Oh, we're going to release you. So that's what it is, and we're releasing you. And best of luck, all those things. And so we're trading you. Like, you're leaving California. This is where you grew up, and you're going to the worst team in the league, and your whole life is now turned upside down, and you're a failure, and you're probably got 2 or 3 years left until no one knows your name, and you'll be forgotten about forever. And now look at him. This is exciting. This is a kind of a cool story. I had never thought about it this deeply until just now, how much of a raging Jared Goff fan I've become.
Look, I think when you look at what made Jared Goff successful, even when he was with the LA Rams and brought them to the Super Bowl, like, it was because he had a strong support system around him, and that's what he has in Detroit. He has a top 5 offensive line. He has a play caller that's setting him up for success with Ben Johnson, and I don't see why, especially when you look at how injured the Lions have actually been the last 2 years. Like, they've been on the bad side of injury luck, 27th and 30th in terms of injury games lost over the last 2 seasons. So if they then finish as a healthier team, like how the Eagles were last year, just a super healthy team. I mean, if that offensive line is top 5, Jared Goff can deal from a clean pocket. Like, he does. Is Chris Jones going to play for the Chiefs on Thursday night? I don't know. We don't know. But if they can't put pressure on him, he's going to dice up that secondary with Amon-Ra and Khalif Raymond.
Look at the game totals for week 1. You got Bengals at Browns, 47.5. There's no game total of 48, no game total of 49, no game total of 50. You've got Dolphins at Chargers, 51. And then you got to go all the way up to Lions at Chiefs, 54.5. This is what we're talking about. This is why you stack your Lions. This is why you were so, wow, man. You must be feeling really good. I mean, if you have all this Amon-Ra, Goff, Khalif Raymond, dude, congrats.
I mean, look, praise the Lord, the Sun Lord, Sun God.
Praise the Lord, praise the Sun God.
He's literally named the Sun God. And again, he's a freaking grinder. Like, Dan Campbell vibes with these certain players that have had to churn their way and grind all the dirt to get to where they're at because they were never put on that pedestal. Even Jared Goff, to an extent, like, he was rock bottom, like you just talked about. And he's had to build himself back up to get. So even though the Lions have more expectations than they usually have had in past years, playing in more primetime games, playing on the Thursday night opener, they still look at themselves as the team that has not won the division since before I was even alive, 1993. So
now we have because the Rams were trading all those picks, and in the meantime, the Cardinals are in a similar situation, going to lose most of their games this year, been acquiring picks. There are mock drafters that are coming out. Have you seen these mock drafts for 2024?
Yeah, it's like got to be all Cardinals at the top, right?
Right. They're
Williams.
projecting Caleb Williams, Marvin Harrison 1-2 to the Arizona Cardinals.
It's how they should do it. Monty Austinfort should win GM of the year because he fleeced the Texans out of.
It's amazing. I mean, what? Please, again, football gods, please. Can we have that? Can we have Caleb Williams with all the drama surrounding where's Kyler Murray gonna go? Oh my God, please! Offseason content is already here. They're already doing 2024 mock drafts. Yes. All right, but we're still in 2023 mode. Okay, let's say you talked about Lamar. So I'm guessing you have more Lamar, Zay Flowers than Justin Fields, DJ Moore.
Correct. Yeah, definitely Lamar, Zay.
Zay Flowers also a grinder. So if there's going to be a rookie from this class that breaks out, you're not allowed to be surprised when it's Zay Flowers. He has a clear path to the number one job there. And he was a total, complete, dominant beast in college. And he did it in his final year. Whereas Jordan Addison was a beast the previous year before he transferred with Kenneth Pickett Sr. So again, Kenneth Pickett Sr. got Jordan Addison drafted in the first round. Another fact that is often forgotten. Now, I don't want to leave the Cardinals quite yet because it is interesting. Clayton Tune in comeback mode, he was like one of these Houston quarterbacks, right? The Case Keenum mode type quarterback. Clayton Tune or Malik Cunningham. If you're in Superflex in Dynasty, I know this is a very specific format, but we have a lot of hardcore people with multiple Dynasty Superflex teams. You prefer Tune or you prefer Malik Cunningham?
Probably going to be Tune for me. I mean, if I need some immediate production, that's probably be the guy I'll go towards, but I don't feel great about it, to be totally honest, because I don't know how long he's going to be the starter. I mean, they brought in Josh Dobbs, too, so maybe Clayton Tune does something. From an upside perspective, it's probably, I mean, the way that Belichick just looks at a guy like Malik Cunningham, I don't know, man. I feel like he's very intriguing. The fact that he let both Bailey Zappi and then back into the wild was like, I don't care. Like, I don't care. Someone take Zappi, and no one take either of them. So they're right. I'll bring him back, knowing that he risked losing Zappi, who had appeared to be at least comparable last year. So I think if you're looking for more short term, it's Tune. But I mean, I'd be lying if I didn't say that I didn't have Malik Cunningham on my Dynasty team, this Fantasy Pros Invitational that is super flex, and Malik Cunningham is on my roster.
And especially in single quarterback dynasty, Malik Cunningham is the play because the upside there as a rushing mobile quarterback is extreme. The answer is Malik Cunningham, by the way. And he's available in a lot of deep leagues. He's still available in a lot of superflex leagues. It's embarrassing. If you are in a league and Malik Cunningham is there, you need to pick him up and you shame the rest of your league mates. Okay, here's a good one for you because I know you don't like dusty players. More fantasy points this year. Raheem Mostert or De'Von Achane?
Achane.
Easy, right?
Don't even think twice. Raheem
don't
Mostert
even think
is
twice.
31. This guy is made of glass. Come on,
right? They have same ADP is the same. Billy and I were drafting. They went almost back to back.
Yeah. I mean, I have a better chance of Achane being more available in week 2 than Raheem Mostert.
Achane's going to be available. He is.
Yeah.
They would, again, if they knew there was something wrong with Jeff Wilson, right? And they knew what they were dealing with Jeff Wilson and Raheem Mostert with their injury histories, and yet they did not find the money to pay Dalvin Cook. That is a signal that they believe in De'Von Achane. He's the perfect fit for that system, and he's gonna be healthy. And it's again, it's not an injury like a hamstring injury that I'm as worried about with Achane, right? The Achane injury, thankfully these rookies that are getting hurt, they're getting hurt with injuries that I'm not as concerned about with JSN and Achane.
Yeah, they're upper body injuries, not, hey, this is a lagging hamstring where it's going to, again, like Cooper Kupp. Like, and it's interesting because the older players are getting all the soft tissue injuries. Weird, because when you get older, that's what happens.
That's so weird.
When you're younger, you pop your shoulder out. All right, you pop it back in, you get back on the field. Good to go.
Okay. This is a question that I asked Tara Roberts, and her answer was eventually posted on Twitter, and I think that she was shocked about the traction that some of these quotes get on Twitter. So she's like, "Uh-oh, I'm suddenly a bad guy on Twitter." And it's like, "Hey, welcome to the family, Tara. This is what happens." Because I asked her the question, who's going to score more fantasy points, Kenneth Gainwell or Jonathan Taylor this year? And she said Gainwell. And we put it up on the board. So what say you, Andrew Erickson?
I'm going to go with Jonathan Taylor.
Okay.
He said cowering in fear. Yeah. That's what I'm going to go with.
But you said it with a complete lack of confidence, having no idea what the hell's going to happen.
Yep. Exactly that.
Yep. And loving Kenneth Gainwell.
Yes, playoff Kenny. He's the next rendition of playoff Lenny. Jerick McKinnon. It's all the same thing. Like, we see them ball in the playoffs, we forget all about it. It's like these games happened and they matter. So, yeah.
No, you're wrong. Kenny. It's going to be Gainwell. How crazy would it be if David Montgomery outscored Derrick Henry in PPR points? This was the hot take I set up for John Paulson, and he threw it right back at me, unfortunately. What do you say about it? Because if we're talking about Lions, how much you love Lions, what about David Montgomery?
Well, let's see. Who's going to catch more passes? David Montgomery. Who's going to score more touchdowns? David Montgomery. Look, Henry may have more rushing yards, but that scores the least amount of fantasy points in PPR formats. So, yeah, David Montgomery, I'm not going to be shocked whatsoever seeing him outscore Derrick Henry running behind the NFL's worst offensive line.
This is amazing. Thank you for saying it. Thank you. This is the honesty we were looking for, right? But it's not just honesty. It's like you don't need to worry about someone, and this is why I love Tara, because she's like, yeah, man, I guess I'm the bad guy now, right? That was her reply on Twitter. Very cool about it. Some people, they don't want to be documented as having an overly specific prediction about anything that happens in sports, because it can be searched and found, and people that are bad faith actors on social media can repost it and try to make you feel bad. I mean, it's happened to me many times, right? Think about Steve Smith with Cooper Kupp, right? So all these cold take police people, right? The take police are always out there, and if you let them win, if you choose to censor yourself, they win. The trolls win, right? And also, who cares? Who cares? No one is 100% right. My response is always, well, show me your track record. Show me your rankings from last year, and then we'll compare them. If this is the game you're playing, right? If you're preaching this from on high that I didn't know what the hell I was talking about with Kenneth Gainwell, or Andrew Erickson, it was disrespecting Derrick Henry, right? Then okay, well, show us your favorite dichotomies or your predictions of inefficient ADPs. Please, by all means, lay out all your positions, so then we can have an apples to apples comparison of your body of work versus our body of work, and we can, because I guess because the larger point is that you're smarter than we are, or you're smarter than I am in this particular situation with my my position on this player. So it's all nonsense. All that they're doing is amplifying these messages on social media and potentially introducing more people to your brand. That's all that's going to do. So no one should ever be afraid of having anything they've said on a podcast, unless what they say is truly offensive, right? But saying that a player is going to be a bust in fantasy football, or that, a particular running back should be ranked ahead of another running back that's going many rounds later, that's not offensive. That's just an opinion. And you should always feel free to let your opinions be shared as much as possible, because then you, as an influencer, your clout will only grow because of it. You just need to get over yourself.
If only the fantasy take police would use their powers for good instead of evil. Why don't you give credit for when people are right about calls? Like, do that for a change instead of being like, oh, well, you're wrong about all this, 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 and this. It's like, oh, well, what about, that call that you were really spot on about? Everyone was on this player, oh, but you weren't. Oh, and you were right about it. Oh, but you don't see those accounts retweeting those posts.
No.
Oh, what a great call.
No.
This person really went out on a limb. They went against the groupthink, which we don't do nearly enough of, because we get sucked into the echo chamber of certain things and we just go with the flow. And people are afraid to then break out, even if they think differently. So I could have said it better myself.
That's right. Yeah. Then you have all these cowards that run these anonymous accounts like Fantasy Receipts, right? And it's just cowardly to not put your identity on something, to not put your name on something, try to shame other people from a position of anonymity is shameful itself. The act itself is shameful. And again, whoever's running those accounts, all those accounts, those are all cowards, 100% cowards and losers. They're losers because they're not gaining anything from this. They're just spinning their wheels online and putting negativity out into the world. They're not getting anything back from it because no one even knows who they are. So if someone said, hey, man, it'd be great if we could hire Fantasy Receipts. Yeah, but he or she is operating in a condition of anonymity, so they're just doing it as a circle jerk out of pure boredom because they hate their life, right? They're a loser, right? Coward losers. Those are the people that you're dealing with. Most people that interact with a position you might take on a player appreciate it. It's just that the 0.5% of people that are either bad faith actors like these losers, the cowards like Fantasy Receipts, or they're individuals that are having a bad day and they're predisposed to react because they're in a bad mood. So then you get skewed, and this is why so many people are demoralized by social media, because then they get their only exposure to feedback is either negative or bad faith actors, and you lose your enthusiasm for the platform. Once you internalize all that, you can actually rewire yourself to only pay any attention to the positive feedback and not give a rip about the negative feedback. And that's the only way to interact on social media. And the funny thing is, I've been telling my daughter this for years, even though she has no access. She can't post anything. She doesn't read any comments, right? But it's like knowing that one day she's going to have an Instagram account or a TikTok account. Like, my wife and I have been talking about this mentality for years to prepare her for one day when she has to walk into this very weird world of what appears to be negativity, but actually isn't. It's just that the silent majority of people are positive and appreciative and have no reason or motivation to comment because they have lives and they're not losers and cowards.
Yeah, I think that you're doing the right thing and you're setting her up for success when she finally does make that step forward into the social media range that, yes, can be toxic, but it's the way that you manipulate it and the way that you use it and absorb it. It can be a really useful and beneficial tool.
It's like when you and I first found fantasy Twitter. Like, it was so big. Like, when you first stumble upon it, whether it's, get referred by a work colleague or a friend, you got to check out, you got to create a Twitter account. There's a lot of good fantasy content on Twitter. And you're like, really? Yeah, okay. Is it hard to find? And you're like, oh, no. Oh, you just follow a few accounts, then suddenly you'll be following hundreds, and then it's going to be your whole timeline. And so I have, forever I'll be thankful for Twitter X, because I have been enlightened by it. It has been a source of a lot of content and connections with people. And so the benefits way outweigh the negatives, but it's a mindset. I only feel that way because of this mindset, which I've hardened over more than a decade. So if you're just going to throw something at someone, a young person, throw a new social media platform at them, that's dangerous. They need to be, taught the principles of it and the tenets of it and the best practices into how to navigate it in a healthy way for years before you actually throw them out there and be like, all right, here's fantasy Twitter. Good luck.
Good luck.
Right? But again, I'm happy about. I like fantasy. You like fantasy. We both love it, right? That's how we first started interacting.
Yeah, when I was very early on, I kept following you, hoping you'd follow me back, and then you never did. So I kept defollowing you because that was my approach. Because that's what I thought. That's how I thought it worked. I was like, oh, I'll just follow this guy. He'll follow me back. And I'm like, this damn werewolf with the martini glass never follows me back. What a jerk.
God. Well, I follow you.
Oh, you do now. But this was like way back when I'm like, all right, so all I have to do is just like I follow a bunch of accounts. And then I just defollow people, so like my ratio is really good. And for some reason, I was like, every time I check the guy with the martini glass with the werewolf, I was like, why is this guy never following me? I always follow him. Like, what the hell? Come on.
The fantasy dog is in the chat. Fantasy dog, which is again, there's always a new fantasy something, and now we've got to the point of saturation where there's now a fantasy dog. A DOG, because I'm sure fantasy DAWG already exists. So he couldn't get fantasy DAWG. He had to go for fantasy DOG. And the next one, maybe DOGG already exists. And then he says, I'm about to launch my channel and I find this conversation most interesting. Thank you, fantasy dog. Thank you.
Yeah, like it.
Appreciate it. Woof. Yeah. Woof, woof, woof. Terry McLaurin's a dog. I would say Curtis Samuel also one of the more dynamic players. A lot of dynamic playmakers in Washington. This offense of all these, so if we create like a list of all the bottom 10 offenses, I think everyone would have Washington on the list. But isn't Washington with Sam Howell potentially like a discount bin Kenneth Pickett Sr.? Isn't there some potential with the quality of the receivers there? And you have Antonio Gibson, because I'm drafting a bunch of Gibson, and I know that different people at Player Profiler like different receivers on this team, and we're generally bullish on Sam Howell and his rushing ability. Isn't this a team that their offense could be sneaky okay or not?
No, I think that
is this a sneaky okay offense?
I think so, because Sam Howell so far. What has he shown so far that would make us not feel like he can be a decent quarterback in the NFL? Like every opportunity he's gotten, he's played pretty well. It's not been a lot of opportunities, but we saw him when he had actual weapons at UNC that were NFL caliber type of players. He was looked at as a no doubt first round pick, and then what do you know? They take away all his weapons and he's worse. It's like, yeah, of course. But the fact that they penalized him so harshly in the draft to move him down to round 5, especially when guys like Corral and Ritter were going in round 3, like significantly ahead of him, never really made much sense to me. And those teams now, especially when they came with the Panthers don't have any weapons. Like, Sam Howell set up so much better for success than Bryce Young is. Like, just look at the receivers he has on his team. So, for me, it's Jahan Dotson, I think, is the guy that I like the most. And I think that you use this idiom on a lot of your shows, or you're very particular with it, but I absolutely love it, is the genie's out of the bottle with Jahan Dotson. And you can't put him back in at this point. I don't think he's going back in.
Especially now with the McLaurin injury, but also the McLaurin, it really helps Curtis Samuel. Curtis Samuel going like last round. We're talking about late on Underdog. And then, we talked about that list of late round wide receivers for best ball drafts, and he's right there. Like, he's actually the one that would be drafted before the deepest of sleepers. Like, he would be in that Mac Hollins tier, right? And then he was even going after Mac Hollins. So where it's like, oh man, that's the beauty I like about underdog and best ball is that I really do love analyzing the Trey Palmers and the Curtis Samuels and thinking about them deeply, but there's no place for them in traditional fantasy. It never makes sense to draft them, no matter how much you like them, because you churn through those back end receivers constantly, and there's all and you're always going to want to load up on the running backs. Even every week that goes by, you're finding who your core wide receivers are going to be, and then you're backloading even more running backs because they can win you a league. And very rarely, the receivers drafted in round 14 through 20 win anyone a traditional fantasy league. That's just not a thing. If you have a deeper league, just draft 4 running backs to close it out. That's the move. But in best ball, it's the opposite. If you're drafting running backs in those rounds, a lot of those running backs will give you 0 fantasy points, and that's just fine if you never have to start them. But if they're holding down, if they're crowding out key bench spots that could make it into your lineup at any given week in best ball, that's bad, right? You need to get those. That's the whole thesis behind a fragile RB approach in best ball, is that either your running backs hit or they don't, and you can't be taking out insurance policies because you need to max out your roster with these late round wide receivers with upside. That upside comes mostly from just pure speed, because Curtis Samuel, he's another 4.3 guy. And if you can get a bunch of 4.3 guys in the end of a best ball draft, you're probably in great shape. Marvin Mims doesn't run a 4.3, but he runs a sub 4.4. And he was available very late in best ball until recently. And then it's fun when guys are in that zone and something breaks their way and they jump up literally like 8 rounds. It's a fun thing, right? I mean, how do you feel about the Marvin Mims ADP now?
I do not care about it whatsoever. I'm drafting Marvin Mims. He's going to be the number 1 receiver on the Broncos. So.
Yes. Well, let's do an ADP check, though. We should do an ADP check on Player Profiler, ADP check on Marvin Mims. It's interesting. He screamed way up boards, and now he's coming back down a little bit. It's been a roller coaster for Marvin Mims and high stakes. It's such it's the most volatile ADP, where any given day you look on Player Profiler, it's actually the Fantasy Pros Championship. Right, so the Fantasy Pros Championship ADP, that's where the most volume is, where you can get the best ADP, and it shifts rounds because it's just based on, just one guy. One guy drafting Marvin Mims in the 7th round is just going to skew his entire ADP for that day. It's a fun thing to just check the Marvin Mims ADP and where it's trending. Now it was way up. Now it's back down a little bit. And it doesn't matter. It's just perfect. It doesn't matter. So what about Sky Moore? What about Elijah Moore? It's like that's the zone where there's just certain sweet spots in a draft. I mean, that Mims, Sky Moore, Elijah Moore, like that pick 100. Because that's about where Mims should be going. He was going at pick 90 yesterday and 120 today. Like, it should be about 100. Brandon Cooks is in that. That's like, mwah, right? That's the sweet spot, that pick 100.
Exactly. I mean, it's like, okay, Mims is gone. All right, I'll take Sky Moore. If Sky Moore is gone, I'll take Elijah Moore. Like, I'll take Brandon Cooks. Like, I think that all those guys are great picks. And it's a point where you can break free from ADP. Like, you want to be, as the draft continues, you want to get looser and looser from the restraints of the ADP because it's more likely to be incorrect as the draft goes on. Like, it's a rookie receiver. It's not like, oh yeah, Marvin Mims is going to be wide receiver 44 at the end of the year. Is he? It's probably going to be like, no, he's probably going to be like top 20 or like outside the top 70 altogether. So his ADP is really just looking at his median range of outcomes, which doesn't actually reflect reality. Like, he's either going to destroy it or he's going to get buried by his ADP. So I want to take shots on multiple of those guys because all I need is one to hit in his upper percentile of outcomes, and I'm golden.
Which team do you think has an implied point total of 15.5 this week?
The Arizona Cardinals?
Yes. 50, I just did the math in my head. 15.5. 15.5. right?
Oh,
And
God.
so in that world where you have all this upside with the possible, reemergence, the renaissance of Deshaun Watson for Elijah Moore, and what's possible, maybe Dak Prescott recapturing his 2020 magic in Dallas. So much upside there with those wide receivers. To go Marquise Brown, but the argument against that, I think the argument ender against a guy like that or a bunch of the other wide receivers on bad teams in that zone is just look at the week 1 point total. Look at the week 1 implied points and back out the math and how the hell this makes any sense, man.
It it doesn't. And it's funny you bring up this game because I was talking to Pat Fitzmaurice talking about this particular game. I'm like, should Sam Howell really be like a touchdown favorite against anybody? I'm like, you know what? It is the Arizona Cardinals. So I think he actually probably should be a touchdown favorite at home. So yeah, I would be backing Sam Howell in this particular. I mean, the Commanders have a good defense. Cardinals, I don't know what their offense is going to look like. So yeah, it's just a stay away situation for me. Again, you talked about it. 2024 draft box. Have Caleb Williams going there. So
it's Caleb Williams, Marvin Harrison. It's like, but if you're going to invest big time draft capital in a player like a Bijan Robinson, for example, I just would like his week 1 matchup to have a higher game total than 40. It would be nice. It would be nice, right? So when I look at Panthers-Falcons and I see a 39.5 game total, I'm just like, fuck, man. Right? It's easy when we're ranting against the Panthers, but there's also the Falcons. They're in this division, and they don't, they don't have the same setup. Like the Saints have a setup where we know their defense is getting worse. They're going to have to throw the ball to be competitive and win this division outright, and they probably will. Right? The Falcons, their defense is getting better. Their offensive line is getting better. They're going to talk themselves into being a run-first team, especially after drafting Bijan. And how the hell that game gets to 39.5, I don't know. Like, I would go under. I think under is a smash there.
I would agree.
It's like, what? Right? But then you see the ADPs of the Falcons. It's like, I don't understand. I can't square the Falcons ADPs with the week 1 game total. I just can't do it.
Well, it's that disconnect, right? So one of them is wrong. So it's either the Falcons are going to be a good real life team and the fantasy pieces just aren't really going to kind of come together, or vice versa, where you see the fantasy pieces kind of work out and maybe the Falcons aren't really as good because of X, Y, and Z. So look, I think that the Falcons are probably the team you want in this game. We talked about Bryce Young earlier. I don't know how long ago that was. Seems like it was hours ago. But we talked about Bryce Young and how he's going to struggle. So you're going to see. I mean, Falcons DST. You need a streamer week 1. Falcons at home.
Well, yeah. If you don't get the Eagles, if you don't just draft the Eagles, Billy and I in high stakes, we were the first to take a defense. I would never take a kicker first, but this is the one instance. This is the one case. Now, again, most people have already had their drafts. So this is a little late for this advice. And it was one of those things where when he talked about it I was like, oh man, I wish I just talked about this a week ago. But I'd be happy to draft. Considering who's available when the first defense goes off the board, to get a team that just drafted Jalen Carter and Nolan Smith, it just they're gonna blot out the sun, man.
They also play the Patriots week 1.
Yeah, I mean this is one of the weirder lines where just because it's a home game, the Eagles are only 4-point favorites, and I mean I know like everyone's like yes, road favorites, good luck with that. Road favorites against Belichick, good luck with that. Road favorites against Bill Belichick, good luck with that. And I'm like, well, at this point, I just don't care. I don't care about any of that. The Eagles are going to maul them. The Patriots are so out of their league with this game and this matchup. A late game 4:25 kickoff. What do you think is going to happen in that game? How? How? I'd want to know who these high volume bettors are that are allowing that line to stay where it is, because clearly there's some money on the Patriots side, some smart money that's holding that line where it is. It's weird.
Well, so this is the narrative, right? That people would be, if you're backing the Patriots, this is what you would say in their defense would be, well, what have they been? They know they have to play the Eagles all offseason week 1. So every single practice that they have been doing during training camp has been, how are we going to stop Jalen Hurts? Malik Cunningham has been running the Jalen Hurts package since the beginning of July. Like, that's all they've been doing. So that's what you would say as a Patriots backer, as this is why 4 points, they can cover this. That's probably what they would say.
Well, they're wrong. They're wrong. I don't. That doesn't make any sense to me. I do believe that Jamal Williams is interesting this week. Do you agree with that? Even though it's the Titans are viewed as this run-stuffing defense, a smothering defense against opposing running backs, which is true. They didn't allow anything to opposing running backs last year. They were the most difficult team to run against. But defenses turn over year to year, man. And this is a home game where I believe that the Saints will be up and they'll be running the ball and to close it out. To me, this just works. The argument that Billy was able to provide against Jonathan the only argument that Billy was able to put forth against Jamal Williams and where I was thinking about drafting him was that you're going to see a lot more Taysom Hill in the red zone than you think. And then that's going to be a problem for Jamal Williams and his touchdowns. But I just feel like this should be a Jamal Williams chalk week.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Kendre Miller is now dealing with a hamstring injury. They don't really have any other running backs on the roster, really. They have Tony Jones Jr. on the practice squad, even though I think that he used to be on Denver, and now they brought him back to New Orleans Saints. Sean Payton's gone, but it doesn't even matter. So I think that, if he's looking at 85%, 90% snap share, if Kendre Miller doesn't even play at all, then I don't see how you get away from him as a 3-down back. I know I've been on some New Orleans radio shows before, and they've talked about how Jamal Williams is going to be used more as a receiver without Kamara, like he was with the Green Bay Packers. Whereas the Lions never had any interest in using him as a receiver, even though he's shown that, hey, if you throw me the ball, I can catch it, can pick up a few yards, whatever. So whether the game script goes north or south, if the Titans get some fluky touchdown, I don't think Jamal Williams is going to get nuked, catching dump off passes from Derek Carr. So I think that means he's probably set up pretty well. But I would say, like, in a tournament setting, because he's in that mid 5K range, there's so many other running backs you can play off of a 30-35% roster Jamal Williams. If he doesn't, because I think he only buries you if he scores like 3 touchdowns and puts up like 30 points. I don't think an 18-point game from Jamal Williams is going to absolutely destroy you if you don't play him.
No, we'll see what happens. We don't. The ownership's not out yet, so we'll see. We'll see how ownership shakes out. But I think he will likely be chalk. I hope he's chalk. I want him to be chalk. I think he's going to be chalk. I'm pretty good at guessing chalk on running backs, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. It's just that at first glance, it's like, no, they're playing the Titans. Then I'm like, wait a second. What are we talking about here? And so, again, shout out to the chat. We have one of the best chats out there. Fans from every team. Philly Mike OG is in there. And he just basically says no one can stop the Eagles. He says, just when you think that you've got their pass game figured out, they're going to run the ball no matter what with that offensive line. Then you got A.J. Brown beating you. Then you got Devontae Smith beating you. Then you got Dallas Goedert beating you. And that's before Jalen Hurts pulls it down. Thank you, Mike. We thought about all those things already. That's all very true. But there's there is some smart money somewhere on the Patriots. I don't know where it's coming from. I don't know what they're thinking. I would love to know because it doesn't make sense. So that's just the question. After week one, so I'm looking at I'm doing a lot of week one, and I'm already thinking about like trades I might make after. Have you ever done that? Look at week one and then think about trades you're going to make in week two.
Oh yeah, because you got to look at, okay, which guy's value is going to get suppressed because this week one matchup is absolutely horrible.
Right.
And maybe I shouldn't draft him and I should just trade for him when he's cheaper because we get these anchor biases, right? Whatever they do week one, oh my God, he sucks. Remember, we saw it Thursday night last year. Gabe Davis, league winner. He was a league winner after week one. Gabe Davis. and that ended up not happening. So, yeah.
Sell high on Gabe Davis. Okay, now, so spoiler alert, you need to go trade for every Steeler after week 1. They play the 49ers. So go trade for all the Steelers after week 1. That's the no-brainer. Okay, except maybe Najee Harris. I can't get on board with that. He also, the funny thing is, if the team plays poorly, Najee Harris's value is the most insulated anyway, right? Because of the brand equity. So again, not even interested in that, but everyone else go trade for him. Another guy I'm thinking about that could be a trade candidate after week 1. And this is, it's hard for me to get here because I much prefer the running back at a similar ADP on the team he's playing. But Dameon Pierce is all set up to go for 31 yards and 2 catches for 5 yards. Like if you said 2 catches, 5 yards, 31 yards rushing for Dameon Pierce, playing the Ravens at Baltimore, that's a potential, buy low candidate. Maybe. I just really don't like drafting running backs on bad teams that don't have that the level of dynamism, like an Austin Eckler level dynamism that I would prefer.
I mean, that's how I would try to get access to Pierce if I really wanted him. I wouldn't try to draft him in the middle rounds where you can get other running backs, I think, later at better prices. And again, you said they play the Ravens. Like, I've been calling this out ever since the schedule first came out. Week 1, 10-point dogs on the road against the Ravens, who traditionally murder teams in week 1. Like, they don't just beat teams. They absolutely... Do you think that they want to come like Lamar, this new offense? All these guys have been sitting all throughout training. They haven't played any preseason games. We have not seen Lamar yet. Dude, they're going to come out and just... I think they're going to destroy the Texans. You're going to see J.K. Dobbins rushing for touchdowns. Like, it's going to be a slaughter. They're definitely going to cover the 10 points. And Dameon Pierce is going to be like 10 carries, 30 yards, cloud of dust. Like you said, 2 catches, and that's it.
The thing is, like, the reason I like Bateman, I like Flowers as much as I do, is like, you have to really motivate the Ravens to not go defense in the first round. The Ravens are the chalkiest drafters in the draft. Like, they are just always, if there is a guy that's like a guy like Nolan Smith in the draft this year, that would have been the guy that every time with the last pick in the first round, the Ravens would be trading back a few picks. They'd end up with the second to last pick in the first round, and they would just get the guy from Georgia, the edge rusher from Georgia, that dropped 15 spots for no reason whatsoever. Classic Ravens. Just classic. So when they do go another direction than that, it's always interesting. But that's what their defense has been built on for the last 10 years, is just chalk premium defensive talent. And you're going to be at home facing the Texans, and it's going to be a bloodbath, and Dameon Pierce is going to feel the pain. George Kittle also, I think the passing game for the 49ers is going to be muted because they could be sitting on a lead. That's the danger playing 49ers week 1 other than McCaffrey. And man, we were in this high stakes draft last night. The free fall of George Kittle in tight end premium has been breathtaking to watch. I can't believe it.
Well, I think the issue is he didn't command a high target share when Brock Purdy was quarterback last year. That's what the numbers have said. It's been Debo, it's been Ayuk, and then he was there with McCaffrey. So you're concerned about his target volume, and he was just the recipient of all the Brock Purdy touchdowns last year. Like, he averaged 1.5 receiving touchdowns per game. So especially in the tight end premium format where you're not really benefiting as much from, you want just volume because it's 1.5 points per reception, but touchdowns aren't making as big of a difference against the rest of the field when other tight ends can catch touchdowns as well. So he just doesn't check off the boxes of, like, that's why I'd much rather have Waller, because Waller can have 8-9 catches in a game versus Kittle, who is probably max out around
every game, dude. He's the number 1 receiver.
Exactly. And Kittle is tied for 3rd with the running back. It's not a good look.
No, it's tough. Like, I was like, Billy, what about Kittle? He's like, And I'm like, you're a 49ers fan. He's like, yeah, we'll see what happens. We'll see if he's still there and around. I'm like, wow, that's where we're at. I can't believe it. He's now right there with Freiermuth and Evan Ingram, and it's a debate. It's the world we live in. So we talked about some deeper receivers earlier, a couple fringe running backs we like. Give me your truther, man. Give me that guy in your dynasty teams that you're still holding on to. I've had to pivot, right? And you can't say Khalif Raymond because I'm now pivoting from Ashton Dulin to Khalif Raymond. So you're not allowed to say Khalif Raymond. I'm going to do the pivot. I'm going to steal Khalif Raymond from you as my truther. Give us one more deep guy, deep cut.
Going right back to Worcester, Massachusetts, Assumption College, formerly known as Deontay Hardy of the Buffalo Bills, the highest paid wide receiver not named Stephon Diggs on the Buffalo Bills.
That's right.
More than doubled Isaiah McKenzie's contract from last season, and someone that just 2021, before he was derailed by injuries last year, 6th in yards per route run, 27% target rate per route run. People will continue to pound the table for Kadarius Toney and his how efficient he is on his targets that he gets. You know who's just as efficient? Deontay Hardy, who plays in the Bills offense, who's a starter and 11 personnel as a slot receiver, went to school right where I grew up. Deontay Hardy for me. It says it in my bio. Deontay Hardy stan, and I'm staying with it.
I love it. I was just going through all my dynasty teams last night while I was going to the bathroom.
As you should.
Which is what we do, right? It's what we do. And I was just reminded about how much Deontay Hardy I have because for these patron leagues, we've converted a lot of them to best ball leagues. And as you can see, I don't know if you can see this, but if you can see the up on Sleeper here, I can't really see it very well. But on my bench, Deontay Hardy, Sleeper has him projected for 6.5 fantasy points. This is another one of those guys. I'm glad I didn't list it earlier. I'm glad I didn't steal your answer earlier. Here's another guy who's on the right offense, who's going to be out there in 3 receiver sets, who is going to deliver spike weeks this year. He has all of it. He has the athleticism. He has the efficiency. He's done it all. He does have a track record of missing games with injury and off the field. He's not like the cleanest prospect, right? He's not the lowest risk guy, but he's the perfect guy to take a shot on late in a best ball draft where hey, I'm locking in routes with the Bills. He's running routes with the Bills. At the very least, we get that, right? And that's why in any best ball format, he's a great sort of fringe option. Now, the cool thing about best ball dynasty is you go out 23, 24, up to 30 players. What you want to do in that format, which again, very fringe. Some of you are patrons, so you're in these formats, but most of you are maybe new to that format. That's the type of player you want to load up on. So I've got a lot of, Jalen Tolbert, Calvin Austin, Deontay Hardy, all these guys, Mac Hollins, all these guys loaded up because they're going to enter my lineup. I know they are. You know what? And I've had over the years guys that I thought could and didn't, right? Like Anthony Schwartz. Guy, he's a sprinter, runs a 4.3, right? Gets landed on a team with a big quarterback upgrade. I'm like, hey, Anthony Schwartz. Why not? Like Tutu Atwell. Like these are guys that you if they have the deep speed, they can deliver the spike weeks, even in bad situations. But it's even better if a guy like Hardy in a good situation. Amazing call. Amazing truth. Maybe probably my favorite truther anyone's given this year was Deontay Hardy. Well done.
Let's go.
Bold prediction.
Marvin Mims leads all rookie wide receivers in receiving yards.
Hey, I want to take a moment to thank you for tuning in. It's important to me that all of our media be free. This is only possible because of you allowing a true independent sports media enterprise to thrive unlike any other in the business. So please subscribe to the All In Package to continue to make all of this possible, to ensure that all of our stats, information, data, content is available to you, especially you, the people that get the site and get the show.